to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, July 29th here. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. It's Borg, Betz, and Jason.
Something looks a little different today, Kyle. I can't quite place my finger on what that is.
So a lot of times when there is something visual, we say, hey, go check us out on YouTube. Okay, you know, you're probably listening most of the time, but when there's something special, we say, you're going to want to go to YouTube. And this one is the exact opposite. Please only listen. Do not go to YouTube. You will never tune in again because we are here, or should I say we're back here, because Backstreet's back. All right. Kyle went to see the Backstreet Boys in the Sphere, and if I may quote Kyle, he said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go all the way. And that's who you are, Kyle. You do things all the way. So you bleached your tips, most of your hair, and you look, I love making fun of it, but it doesn't look bad. It just looks wrong.
It's kind of a new look for Kyle.
That's where I ended too, where I go, okay, I'm going to do this because the concert, I bought tickets for my wife and I got to go. But it's a lot of millennials. Everyone's kind of dressing in that era. And I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Let me just give you a spoiler. I think I was the only one who did that with the hair. I was like looking around like, oh, it's just me. But then the next day was at the pool, the day after, still in Vegas. I was like, this doesn't look terrible. And so my kids wanted me to keep it going. So I'm going to see how it goes for a week, and then I'll probably just buzz it and be done. But it was a fun little life experiment to say, hey, I'm about to be 40, and this is where I want to be now.
Dude, that picture that your wife sent of you with the towel, draped around your shoulders with your Starbucks cup, you just like you're at the salon for the day, ready to have the best day of your life. So I'm glad you had fun, buddy. What's amazing though about the trip is that in hindsight, it sounds so funny because you bought these tickets months and months in advance.
Yes, and back in March.
Correct. But the actual concert was on your real birthday, wasn't it?
Correct.
So to everybody on the outside looking in, it looked like Kyle purchased tickets for himself for the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere.
But it's also not like when you were buying them for your wife on that day that it was like you didn't know, oh, that day is also my birthday. This was for Kyle.
I mean,
treat yourself.
I did. And Vegas was very kind to us. Vegas was great. Ate tons of good food. And I know Jason likes Vegas a lot.
I do, but it's not usually kind to me.
Oh,
that's the phrase I took. Oh, Vegas was kind to you. Amazing.
I had a good time. So anyway, this will be it. We'll see next week if I'm back. And bleach tips. I didn't think that would be part of my 2026 bingo card, but here's where I'm at now. On this episode, we are going to finish our series on tiers. We're going to talk about Dynasty tight ends. And I really was going through the process of going through our rankings and asking myself a question. Does it really matter after I get to like tier, 4 or 5? Is there a discussion to say like, man, here's the tight ends in tier 6 that you really need to think about? And at the end of the day, it's like, well, we know that there's about 7 or 8 tight ends that matter. And
it was funny. I was going through the show doc and each tier slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then you could tell Kyle just got to the point where he was like, these guys are all the same. TJ Hawkinson, Hunter Henry,
TJ Hawkinson,
Schultz.
did he even make it in the tiers? Because I don't even know if
technically
he
is.
He did. He is here. He is technically in tier 7.
Okay. Does he even want to be here anymore?
Have fallen.
Does he care anymore? Does he care about football?
I'm sure he does.
How old is he? 29?
I want to say he's 29 going on 38. He's one of those. There's always these players that just, their number isn't that crazy, but they just feel so old. Their body aged quickly. I don't know if it's the hair, the beard, or just the injuries. Usually it's part and parcel to guys that have spent a lot of time in their career being injured later in their career. But yeah, he feels done.
I feel like all he has to do, since he has that luscious hair, is if he just bleached it, he could go back, turn back the clock.
You look so young. You look so young and stupid. Like young people look stupid, so you look so young and stupid.
Would you have said this looks stupid, 25 years ago?
No, because
No,
you
it's cool,
would have
man.
been appropriately aged.
There you go. That's what matters. So we'll talk about all through those Dynasty tight end tiers. If you don't have an elite, what should you do? Can you even trade up for some of the elites? We'll talk about those in just a second. But I did want to give a reminder. Coming up in exactly a month, Jason, is the live show, the Megala show at the Van Buren in Phoenix. A month.
That's crazy. It's going to be a really cool special time. We've got plenty of fun things planned for it. If you haven't got seats, I was just checking. Yeah, there's still, they opened up the side mez seats. So there's a few more seats available. Yeah. All right. Well, so you can check it out, ballerslive.com. Hopefully you already got your seats, or if not, get them now. It is sometime soon in August, probably another 2 weeks. We'll make a big hit on the show for whatever remaining tickets are there. So, get them before then.
Yeah. You come there, have a drink with, I bet last time I know somebody bought me a drink at the live show. I was like, sweet. If you want to just buy me a drink, I'm down with that. Bought my wife a drink. It was great.
Kyle's just begging people to come to the show to buy him drinks.
Please
come to the show for my benefit.
Yeah. This is the Ballers SiriusXM presents the Fantasy Footballers Megala show presented by PetSmart and GMC. Hashtag Get Kyle Drunk. That is the whole point of this show.
I'm also going to be working that night.
No, you're not. Come on.
Yeah. So actually, the whole crew will be there. I mean, most everybody who's a part of this, Borg and Betz will be in Arizona for that. We've got all the Deucers, Papa Josh, Al Borland, the Falcon, Baby Josh. Everybody's going to be there. So come on out and meet the crew.
All right. Before we get in the tiers, I had a quick question.
I'm seeing, oh my gosh.
What?
I'm seeing verified resale tickets available. People are scalping now.
No.
Yeah. If you want some tickets in the front section, I see 4 available at a higher rate. So we're at that point.
There's some people I'm going to make some money off those suckers, off those ballers. I'm just going to get them. We had this internal question the other day, and I thought it would be worth bringing up a discussion here on the podcast about the 2027 draft. I think we checked in about a month ago, and I wanted to do it again because we've heard the refrain that 2027 picks in your Dynasty League are super valuable. But part of our conversation has been there's kind of varying opinions about which players are valuable, which positions are deep. I know Mike Renner, who is somebody that we all over the years have really respected a lot, especially when it comes to draft stuff. He brought up some stuff about how we're going to see maybe a resurgence of first-round running backs, where I believe a couple weeks ago I was like, man, I'm not seeing any in the mock draft. So I wanted to just give people kind of a high level what to do and what to not do at this point in the process. Before college football season starts, before you know what happens in your Dynasty League, what are just some do's and don'ts or takeaways that you have about how you should approach 2027 draft picks? I'll let you go first, Betz.
Yeah, I think just to kind of hammer home what you're talking about, the running backs on the show that we did, the running back tiers, I think it was 2 weeks ago, Jason was on, we were talking about there's not a Genty or a Jeremiah Love projection right now. And people came back and were like, well, you guys are saying the class is weak. That's not necessarily the take home for sure. We were saying there's no top 10 NFL draft pick that it looks like right now. And Mike Renner was coming out and saying the class looks pretty good. I've got some guys that I think could sneak into the first round. And so that is a good way to kind of frame what happens in NFL draft cycles, where it's you have your initial take on the class. And I think from a top level view, most draft analysts are pretty good at kind of giving us a general idea of here's where the strengths are, here's where the weaknesses are. But you need to leave your mind open to what is going to change over the next 4 to 6 months as you get more information, as players play their final season and either ascend up draft boards. Remember the Joe Burrow year, his final season at LSU skyrocketed. Fernando Mendoza 2 years ago was not even thought of as a first round NFL draft pick. Jaden Daniels, these guys come out of nowhere, and Drew Aller and whoever else from years ago were supposed to be the next guys, and they fell drastically. So you just need to keep your mind open to what is going to change, because a lot is going to change in the next 3 to 4 months. And then when the NFL teams really dive into these guys, that's when we get more information.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best thing you should do is keep your eyes on it and the movement, because as you know, you want to make, if you're going to make a decision now, whenever it's time, whenever the now is, whether that's today or it's 6 months from now, before you make your decision, go and check in again at like what is the current projection. Because as time goes on, we're going to have more and more clarity to how strong or weak the draft is. You always have to make the decision to pull the trigger on a trade today. That's always the case. So wherever you are in that point in time, do a double check. Don't just be like, well, I heard 6 months ago it was going to be this, so, I pick 6 is so much less valuable. It changes even after the draft, obviously changes after the NFL season. However, overall viewpoint is that the 2027 draft class is very good. It is not a down draft year. And I think that's the thing that probably won't change by next year, especially with all the quarterbacks.
Yeah, you think about what your 108 was, 109 in your draft this past year. It's like it started to run dry with offensive skill position players. You're just looking up and you're like, I don't feel confident. Am I taking, I don't know, Jonah Coleman here at the back of the first round? And I think part of the process...
I mean, honestly, after the top 4 or 5 if you were in a super flex.
Yeah.
You were early in drafts going, okay, all right. Let's take the guy that the Browns took.
Yeah, and Superflex, the order of quarterbacks, like right now, it has shifted so much already, and we haven't even started the college football season. But you think about the end of the college football season where Trinidad Chambliss, the Ole Miss quarterback, was, and he had his legal battles, and now he's kind of slowly dropped to like, yeah, he's a top 10 quarterback, but he's not a first-round pick by most people's accounts. Here's the variables, okay? So right now, it's the end of July. NFL teams, we don't know who has those picks, and so who will be picking those players. That's going to be something that's up in the air. College teams, right? Are they going to perform? Are these players going to like take a step back? I know that Penn State team, I hate bringing this up, Betz, but it was a disappointing year. It was terrible. It was like I would have been sad to spend money to go to Penn State games this past year.
Well, good thing the in-laws have the season tickets. So I mean, come on.
But it was like
I would never.
It was such a step back from what the preseason expectations were. There's injuries, and then the one that I was looking at with the running backs, the 3 top running backs are K'Wan Lacey with Ole Miss, Jaden Baugh out of Florida, and Ahmad Hardy out of Missouri, who was recently shot, and he's recovered from that. The 3 top running backs all have 3 brand new systems this year, like brand new play callers. The offense is going to change, and maybe that's a good thing. I don't know, but like that's a variable that when you look at their film from this past year, we would do the same thing in the NFL. It's like, this is a different system. How are we going to adjust? Like the college teams are doing that too, especially with the transfer portals and coaches flying all over the place. So those are the things that each position, but especially the running back position, like I just don't know what I don't know. A year from now, what's going to happen?
For sure. And I mean, I don't even want to put this out there, but we need to assume health on these guys too, right? Which unfortunately is part of the game.
Yep. And your dynasty pick, right? Like you don't know what you don't know about your team and what pick you're going to have. And you hope you have a top 3 pick, but let's say you end up with a 105 or 106. Like those are the things that change. So I'm not saying to be paralyzed by this. I'm just saying, let's not make dogmatic and blanket statements of things we just don't know. Like the Alabama wide receiver that we've talked up a lot, Ryan, the artist formerly known as Ryan Williams, but now he's Ryan Coleman Williams. He's right now in the latest mock drafts, it's a consensus, 32nd overall player on the board. Like, it's been a slow decline over the last year for a player that after a freshman year, it's like, this dude is going to be one of the dudes. And we'll see. He could rebound, be totally fine. But just if you would have made up your mind about Ryan Williams a year ago, then you wouldn't have been open to things changing. That's all I want to say. So if you're rebuilding, you should be happy. And we will have all the players highlighted. We personally do not start the scouting process. So Jason is not going to go in and watch every single person's film because we got the NFL. We got a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, I will, but not until the NFL season's over. I already did it this year.
Yeah. And I think it's fine. Like, I think some people like beg us to do both at the same time, but I don't think there's like a giant rush. And on this show, we turn the page when we get to January. We talk about prospects, get into all that. But we'll check in a couple of times. I know we'll probably do a quick question or so where we get to talk about our favorite players, anybody we like. So Dante Moore out of Oregon, spoiler alert, I like him.
Early my guy.
Sure, in 2029. That's what it's going to end up being there. Anyway, let's take a quick break, and we'll talk about some tight ends. I did do a little bit of a look ahead at the 2027 tight end class. And I don't know if you came across this, Jason, when you're doing Kenyon Sadiq film, but the other tight end on the Oregon team, Jamari Johnson, there's a couple times I remember watching Sadiq film, like, I think I like him just as much. And I wasn't trying to be hot takey, like, I liked him.
Yeah, I mean, that is the forgiveness to Sadiq's poor profile, like the counter argument to why he, didn't have 1,000 yards. And, his counting stats weren't that high for such a talented, such a highly drafted player. You compare him to, what Bowers did, and you're like, it's not remotely close. Well, the argument is that he played with another stud tight end on the same roster that might be the better tight end. So yeah, I did see some of that. It actually, ironically, reminds me of Ladd McConkey, who his numbers weren't nearly as good as his talent, and you needed to forgive it because he played with Brock Bowers.
Yeah. That's such a funny part of us, like, doing evaluation for players. Is like, for some players, I'll forgive them because I can see the path, and the other players, I'm like, I don't get it, and I don't understand, and I don't see what the NFL sees, but there's some nuance to all this stuff. But we're going to talk tiers with tight ends. Let's go for it.
Dynasty Rankings.
So I got to ask you guys, on your main Dynasty teams, are you blessed with having a top-tier tight end? Just think about your main teams.
Two of them? Yes.
Let me ask you a follow-up question.
Who is a top tier?
How do you feel about Kyle Pitts? Is he a top-tier Dynasty tight end? Betz?
No.
No, I know.
Because when Kyle asked the question, I thought of, obviously, Bowers, Trey McBride, and then last year's big two, which, I mean, Fannin had an awesome year, but most people will still put Mr. Loveland, except for Kyle. He would never do this, but we would put Mr. Loveland kind of in that third tier, most likely, with Tyler Warren, and those two will always be attached at the hip. Again, Kyle would literally never, ever do this, but those two, I think, are in that conversation.
Hates that, dude. No, so in our main Dynasty League, I'm sitting there rocking with Kyle Pitts, and then I've got Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely. I do have Trey McBride and Dino Jr., though, which is really fun. Went from Kelsey to McBride.
What's funny, Jason, is you have Pitts in that league who used to be on our roster, and we made a decision last year. Are we trading away Pitts? Or are we trading away Tucker Kraft? And it was part of a deal. We didn't feel like we needed it. We had Kelsey at the time, and we went back and forth. I'm the Falcons fan. Al is the Packers fan. So we're kind of split about what we should do. And I just gave it to Jeremy. I said, what do you want to do? He's like, let's roll with Tucker Kraft. And we feel so good about it now.
Oh, of course you do.
Nice.
I will trade you Kyle Pitts for Tucker Kraft straight up. And I don't know if you know this, Tucker Kraft's injured right now.
Really?
Do you accept that?
He may never run again.
And Kyle Pitts is still like 21, right?
He's actually, isn't he 25 now?
Yeah, he's about to be 26.
Yeah.
So
he's just hitting his peak production for tight ends.
He's going there.
We're back.
We're going to go through these tiers, and I will give you a couple of stats as we go through each tier about these players. And I focused on what do they do in the red zone, and then what did these tight ends do in 11 personnel versus 12 personnel. So there are some offenses that function in a way where two tight end sets is what they do, and it works really well. There are other offenses that when they go to 11 personnel, it actually hurts the tight end. But Kyle Pitts, weirdly enough, like, he has backward splits where when there's three wide receivers on the field, he has a much bigger target share because the team didn't have any other wide receivers last year. So it's like, we think of the tight end position as being kind of like its own thing, but even when you go in 11 personnel, what kind of tight end is this, and what kind of pass catchers does this team have? Do they have people that can compete for targets, or is it nobody? Like the Falcons, it was, literally nobody else on the depth chart. Darnell Mooney was running wind sprints, and it didn't really matter. So we'll talk about those two stats. Let's start off with Bowers, and I have him in a tier of his own, and I'm calling this the robot from heaven tier because Clint Kubiak this offseason, when he was asked about Brock Bowers, the first thing out of his mouth, he said, he is a football robot from heaven. It was one of my favorite.
And he's not wrong.
Does he belong by himself?
Yeah, he does belong by himself. If I were, I've got McBride. I would trade McBride plus to go get Bowers. I think Bowers, one, outscores him this year. So already I think he's a better just redraft tight end. And two, he's 3 years younger than McBride. So, you're talking about, we look at dynasty windows usually in 3-year stretches because we're not the type of show to say I want to build a superpower a decade from now someday, because those just never work. You want to build a team that can win a championship now, and that you look at these 3-year windows of players that are going to be great. A 3-year age gap is massive between those guys, considering that the younger one might be the better one. No insult to Trey McBride's talent, but yeah, I mean, for dynasty, Brock Bowers is absolutely in his own tier, and I don't think you can trade for him.
You can't.
I tried.
I mean, I think I'll bet if I traded Trey McBride into 1, someone would take that deal because they'd be like, okay. But
what's funny about
that's too much.
I was going to bring up that example because I have Trey McBride in a tight end premium league, and last year was unbelievable, like literally beautiful. And so I tried to capitalize on the end of season run that he had, kind of understanding we might get some regression for Trey McBride, like just the number of routes he ran, the garbage time with Jacoby, Marvin Harrison injured, etc. Like I want to be in on Bowers, and the manager that had Bowers was not. You're not seeing this by anybody. They wanted a first on top of Trey McBride, and I was like, yeah, I love Bowers obviously, but I don't know that I'd do a first to move up to this tier. What would you guys draw the line? A second? 2 seconds?
That's what it costs. You're saying what would you do?
I was not comfortable doing the first plus Trey McBride.
And I wouldn't be either. I don't want to give up a 27 first to just get younger at a position. And that's really primarily what you're doing. I think I would do a second. I think I would do Trey McBride in a second for Bowers. But I don't know that gets it done.
Yeah, I'm going to say, like, I think to get it done across the table, if it ends up being the 109 or 110, I'm comfortable paying that price. Like, I'm fine with that. But with Bowers, you're also adding in, we haven't really gotten, like, there's another level ceiling that he hasn't hit yet. I know he was the tight end 2 years ago. But like,
I agree.
There's like he breaks the position, and anything that McBride did last year, which was setting a bunch of records, like he goes even further than that with Kubiak. The offense, I mean, there's still the variables of what the quarterback is, but he had a 32% first read target share when there are 2 or fewer wide receivers on the field. And I feel like that's what we're going to get all this year is 12 personnel, him, Michael Mayer, and then who cares who's running around routes at wide receiver. And this, like, if Brock Bowers, what's the highest ceiling for like his target share this year? Could he hit 35%?
Yes, he could on that roster wild. with no receiving options. I mean, you're talking about your wide receiver 1 is Jalen Naylor, like
Jack Besh.
There's Jack Besh for sure. Your wide receiver 1 is Brock Bowers, and he's not just a default. He's not Clay Matthew or what was it? Clay. Who was Mr. Necessary? I know his name was Clay.
Oh, Charles Clay.
Charles Clay, Mr. Necessary. He was a tight end 1 because they had no one else to throw the ball to, but he wasn't special. This is truly a generational, and that is thrown out a lot, but it's deserved and actually the case for Bowers.
Yeah, Bowers, just for context, if people kind of forget, because last year we had all this hype and excitement, and of course he has the PCL injury in the first game, and in that game he was going berserk against the Patriots. Comes back, it's slow, he's playing with the brace, took a couple weeks off, came back and was good again down the stretch, but just go back to the rookie year. He earned 153 targets as a 22-year-old rookie. This guy is unbelievable, and I think he's going to break fantasy multiple times, similar to what like Kelsey was doing in his prime, Gronk in his prime, those types of seasons where it's like he is separating from the field in a way that it is just so powerful for your roster. And if you can lock that in for the next handful of years plus, like this guy's, he's the real deal.
Through 2 seasons, he has 12 total touchdowns. Like, we're going to get a double-digit touchdown season coming up. And he was much better inside the red zone last year with Geno. So, yeah, there's a ceiling that he hasn't hit, and that's so enticing for somebody at this age. We don't need to talk any more about Bowers, but man, if you could get him. right now. It's only going to go up from here.
I just sent the offer out, McBride in a 2. We'll see how long before it gets rejected.
There you go. Speaking of Trey McBride, he's in tier 2 by himself. Do you think he belongs by himself in his own tier?
I do.
So, yeah, it's tough because you ask me a month into the season,
Right.
because and obviously in Dynasty you have to project. You've got the Loveland, Warren, and even Fannin, where if a month in you look like, okay, they are what we right now, they're hope. They haven't done it. We expect them to do it, and there's a lot of hopium around those guys. If they do it, they usurp him. They are better than McBride because they're younger. But right now it would be, well, put it this way. Here's the best example of knowing if it's true or not. I just literally offered Bowers in a 2 for the
McBride,
robot from heaven.
Right.
McBride in a 2 for Bowers. I would not in any way, shape, or form offer Trey McBride straight up for Loveland or for Warren today. I mean, that could turn out to be a mistake, that Loveland could leap up into that tier, but there's absolutely no guarantee. And Trey McBride is a guarantee. And for fantasy, I'm going to stick with the known commodity and not just chase, oh, what if they turn into Trey McBride? It's like, no, just because they're younger alone isn't good enough. So yes, Trey McBride is definitely in a tier of his own.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, some of those arguments you can make for Loveland and Warren if it happens, but there is something that's still valuable in proof of concept. Like, you've seen it, you trust it, you know what you're getting. And if you're talking about like a dynasty startup situation where you can reliably put this guy in your lineup every single week and not think twice about it, there's so few of those guys in the NFL at tight end. And obviously Trey McBride is one of those guys. We think and we're hoping Loveland and Warren, except for Kyle, will be those guys in the near future, but obviously there's some projection like Jason said. So yeah, I do think he deserves to be in a tier of his own.
I want to bring up one regression / quirky stat with McBride, just because it was so fluky. Whenever I find stats, we're doing research for the shows, I'm like, how normal is this? So he had 11 red zone touchdowns. He was awesome. He had, let's see, like 6 coming into this for his whole career. So he had 11 red zone touchdowns. But the weird thing is 7 of them occurred between 11 and 20 yards to the end zone. So like not inside the 10-yard line. It's the most of any player since 2012. So like he caught it inside the red zone and then he ran another 10 to 15 yards to get the touchdown. It's just not normal for people to do that and to continue to do that. Arizona led the NFL in passing touchdowns in this range of the field. It's just not a repeatable thing year over year for any player. The last time somebody did something like this, it was Eric Ebron in that really big touchdown year. So his touchdowns will change.
There should be regression, but I will say, and another thing, we talk about this in redraft. I don't think it's as big a deal in Dynasty. The fact that there will be a quarterback change at some point, you will see Carson Beck on the field, and that will be very bad for Trey McBride. I was going to bring up the fact that a couple years ago when he was playing with Kyler doesn't throw many touchdowns. He just doesn't. He's good. He's good for fantasy because he rushes for touchdowns as well, but he doesn't throw a ton of touchdowns. So McBride always suffered in the pass-catching touchdown world. Obviously, with the change to Brissett, who can throw touchdowns, it made it should meet in the middle. The expectation for McBride should be to get 8 touchdowns.
Just for context on Kyler's touchdown rate, 4.1% for a career touchdown rate, not great. 4 straight seasons below 4% for Kyler. So, like you talked about, it kind of held Trey McBride back from a ceiling perspective. We all talked about, there was the bit running 2 years ago. Remember, it was like week 16 or week 15. He still hadn't caught a touchdown from Kyler.
And they were trying
they were force-feeding him to get it there. And then regression smacks him in the face this year with Jacoby Brissett. And now it'll level off somewhere in the middle. But yeah, I mean, obviously from a reliability standpoint, there's not going to be anybody most weeks in weekly rankings. The only guy that'll be above Trey McBride most weeks will be Brock Bowers. Like, just for what you're getting from a projection standpoint, he's so rock solid. And I think sometimes too in fantasy we can do the thing where we like over project regression. Like we did it with James Cook for a couple of years, where it's like, well, he's gonna regress, right? And he did, but to what degree, right? It was
he
still
saw more carries.
Yeah, he saw more carries, and it was regression did technically happen, but he was still so awesome. I think the same thing could happen for someone like Trey McBride. Matthew Stafford this year. Like, sure, his touchdown rate is coming down, but like maybe he throws 32 touchdowns this year instead of 40, whatever it was. Like, the guy is still going to be good for fantasy. The same is going to happen for Trey McBride.
Let's go to tier 3.
Okay, I've got an update on my trade.
And?
On my trade
I can tell
offer.
you exactly. There's no chance that somebody wants to do this.
It has not been seen yet.
Oh, okay.
Other than by my co-manager, Mike, the fantasy hitman, right?
Uh-huh.
He says, and I quote, "The hell you doing?" He says, he sent a screenshot and said, "I don't think this makes sense for our old man team." But he's wrong. He just doesn't see the upside in Bowers breaking the position versus just being the number one and 3 years younger.
When you've been this far with McBride, it's one of those things too. You're like, man, this guy's. You've seen him since he was a pup, since you drafted him. And look at him.
Yeah,
now.
the weight behind Zach Ertz.
I mean, there's very little as a Cardinals fan to root for. So, but he's won. It's like, okay, that's helpful as well. And it was always. It played out so perfect as a general manager of our franchise.
Yes,
we were riding Kelsey forever, and we reached on McBride. We took him in the first round of that year because we really believed in the talent, and we regretted the heck. We took him. It's hard to remember. We disgustingly made the mistake of taking him ahead of Jahan Dotson, who went on to a great rookie season. And after the year, we're like, I guess we made a mistake.
Yeah, I was the manager.
I guess we made a mistake. We shouldn't have taken McBride, but we just loved the talent. We loved the film. But then we're back, baby. Zach Ertz got injured, and it was like, yeah, that's the dude. That's the dude we knew.
Was he really a first-round pick, Trey McBride?
No, he was second round in the NFL, but first round
in our dynasty
draft.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the NFL draft. I was like, really? I don't remember that. Yeah,
no, we reached. He wasn't a first-round pick in dynasty either. Right. He was usually a second rounder there, but we said nay.
What astute managers, in the fake game we played, these guys saw. These guys knew. I guess these two are always going to be intertwined in tier 3, like Loveland and Warren, and it stinks that people have to take sides. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Why can't we just
hate Warren or Loveland? Yeah.
Why can't we just like these players and who they are? But also, I think it's because I love Tyler Warren so much that it looks like hate for Loveland.
Yeah, that is what it is. I mean, to be fair, the college prospecting when we were in that time, pre-NFL draft, for Kyle and I, we were much bigger fans of Tyler Warren than Colston Loveland. Colston Loveland wasn't a tackle breaker, dealt with injuries. Warren was a dog. I mean, he was just out there, 3 guys hanging on his back and getting extra yards. And so we really did prefer Warren. Then you go into their rookie seasons and they both showed out. They both were like, they're great. Betz, you were higher on Loveland. And so I think those priors that you carry with you, that you root for them to be right, and therefore you hate Colston Loveland.
Spot the lie.
You're not.
No,
I
know you do not hate Loveland. It's a bit on the show. So comparing these two guys, the way that I view them right now is that Loveland's upside is higher than Warren's. I think that his talent, the way they use him, feels more like a wide receiver sometimes, more down the field stuff. And Warren feels a little safer. To me, he feels safer because Rome Odunze and Luther Burden are really, really, really legit target hogs. And I can easily see a world where all 3 of those players are very good, in which case for fantasy, all 3 are frustrating and are not helping you win championships because, they're too volatile. Whereas Warren, I've got him as the clear leader in targets for this team. I think he will definitely have the most targets on this team. He's competing with Josh Downs, who I like, who's okay. Alec Pierce, they paid, but he's been there a long time. He's never been a target hog. He's, more of a low volume, high yards per catch type player. Maybe that'll change. Warren should be their number 1 target. Loveland, I believe I do. No, I think I have Rome down for more targets, but he's right there with him. But should they both hit, Loveland will move a tier above Warren because he's 2 years younger than Warren. And if he hits that ceiling, then, again, he'll probably usurp McBride.
I think that's well said. I don't really have too much to add there. I'm glad you pointed out the path for Warren, because when we talk about these players, I think based off at least like redraft ADP, Loveland goes first. And so like if you are taking somebody in this tier in your redraft league, like most people think of like Warren as the consolation prize in this tier. But I want to point out for people, like I really think Warren has one of those unbelievable ceilings this year because of the way that Shane Steichen schemes for his first read. And, Pierce coming off the ankle procedure, we think he might get off to a little bit of a slower start as he ramps up. Josh Downs, look, I've traded for him this offseason. I'm hopeful that he can break out in this, new role. You're doing a lot of projection there. Like, to me, it all comes back to Warren and how they scheme him. And I also was kind of thinking about the Daniel Jones Achilles thing. Like, if he can't push the ball down the field, what is the easy button for him to push for Shane Steichen? Tyler Warren in the intermediate area of the field all day. And so I think Warren has as much ceiling as Loveland this year, though I think in the general like redraft take for people, they don't view that the same way. So I love Loveland. Obviously was my dude last year and everything, but I do want to point out, I think Warren is one of those guys that has a real ceiling this year.
Yeah, I think, Jason, I was looking at your projections for Warren. It's like you have him as the clear target leader for that team. I want to say it was like 130, 140 targets, which is wild to be able to say about a tight end. Loveland, I'm not so sure, but in doing a deep dive on the Bears, like Ben Johnson, for all his brilliance, like I just was so impressed that he didn't want to baby Caleb. He could have done that and come in and be like, okay, well, Caleb has some issues. Let's not do it. They kept targeting the intermediate part of the field, which is what we want in a quarterback and what we want for our pass catchers. And Loveland, if you just look at that back half of the year, he was targeted on 38% of his intermediate routes. It was like the Bowers type of usage. So when you said his upside, Jason, like a year or two from now, like I have no idea what Loveland could be. And it could be like he sees 150 targets in a season in an offense, which is crazy because we think this offense, I think long-term is set up better than what the Colts are. The Colts are going to have to figure out a year from now. Josh Downs on the roster, figure out with Jonathan Taylor. Is Daniel Jones still a thing? Is Steichen still the coordinator? The Bears.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you guys about Steichen. Like, what's your comfort level there? Because it doesn't feel like the clock is ticking on. They had the success last year, which they obviously had the unfortunate injury with Daniel Jones, and it was all just taken from them. But like, it kind of feels like at some point they need to see more in the playoffs for Steichen to keep his job long term, and then you have question marks on play caller. So I do think if you're breaking ties here, like just trusting Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams over Daniel Jones and potentially changing staff in a year or two would be enough for me to break the tie.
Steichen,
Steichen will
9-8, 8-9, and 8-9,
and he's been on the hot seat the last 2 years. And I don't necessarily think that's been fair to him. I believe he's a good coach.
I do
if
too.
If he were to go 8-9 this year, sub 500, and I was the general manager, I'd keep him around. And you're going to have to sift through the fan noise because fans will want him gone. But I also think he'll be gone. If they go 8-9, I think Steichen's gone.
Yep. Now, last little question about this tier, because we've kind of talked about what would it take to move up a tier. I feel like if I had one of these players, I'm just waiting. They're so young. Yeah. I'm not waiting to try to pay up to get a Bowers or a McBride. Like I'm ready. I'm just happy. I hit a home run with my rookie pick, and I'm just going to stay here.
If I could move up to Bowers, like Loveland, if I had Loveland, I would offer Loveland and a 1 for Bowers,
knowing that it probably costs more.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying I would offer it. And some people are insanely crazy for Loveland. So it's really a person to person. Like if some people think Loveland is just going to be in the same tier with Bowers and then they get a first rounder. Yeah, let me pull the trigger. Maybe you catch them while they're drinking. Who knows what the situation is. But
at the live show,
if I had Loveland and I'm not a complete rebuild, if those two things are true, I would go offer Loveland and a first for Bowers. Bowers on a startup brand new dynasty league. I mean, you can make the argument that he should be going like pick 4. I mean,
he's a first round pick in your rankings.
Yeah. Oh,
I think he should be.
Because he should be.
Yeah, not for Mike and Andy, but I've noticed that in your rankings, Jason. In a one quarterback startup, like he's a firm first round pick for you. And then Superflex, I could see him be at that 1-2 turn. Let's do this tier real quick. Tier 4, I'm calling it punch you in the face because I feel like these are the dudes, if I had them on my NFL roster, like these dudes can run over people. It's Harold Fannin Jr., who was like one of our favorite film watches from college. Tucker Kraft, who might be the hardest tight end to tackle in the NFL, or at least like he can put people on the ground. And then Sam LaPorta, who has suddenly become a household name, a best buddy, someone you think about all the time. These three together in this tier, how do you guys feel about grouping these guys together?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense. They're different archetypes. You've got the more boring Sam LaPorta, but on the best offense, the highest scoring opportunities offensively. Obviously the young Harold Fannin, who is on the worst offense imaginable and now has more target competition, but he's very young, and all he's done his entire career of playing football is dominate statistically at every level. And so, including the NFL, so why won't it keep happening? And everyone's darling is Tucker Kraft. Everyone's. I mean, like I said earlier, I will offer you Kyle Pitts for him right now. Official offer?
Yeah, no, send it in. We'll talk to.
I just did verbal official offer.
No, we need it. I need it on my desk.
Yeah, all right. I'll send that in. I think this is appropriate. The next tier will have Pitts, and I would trade Pitts for any of those guys.
Agreed.
I want to point out one Tucker Kraft statistic. When they had 3 wide receivers on the field, which is one of those Packers conversations we've been having for years, right? Like is Jaden Reed on the field? Is he not on the field? Who's on the field? When Tucker Kraft was on the field and 3 wide receivers on the field, he averaged 2.92 yards per route run. Like, he was awesome, and arguably, I think their best pass catcher when everybody was there.
Yeah, I do
everybody
too.
was available.
There's so much argument about the 3 wide receivers and are they really good or not? Christian Watson's the best, can't stay healthy, blah, 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 blah. Seems like your best weapon with the ball in his hands was Tucker Kraft.
That's my biggest pushback on the Christian Watson talk from you guys. It's just like when Tucker Kraft was on the field and Christian Watson's on the field, like he just didn't dominate the targets. Tucker Kraft was the main guy. Now, Tucker Kraft has a bunch of touchdowns that like you punch someone, put him in the ground, and then you take it to the house. Like he can do that, but those aren't the easiest to project long term. But of this group, like I think he would be my favorite. He needs a contract extension though. That's the thing I don't have with him.
They've already talked about it. I mean, there's multiple beat reporters saying it's going to get done at some point in training camp. So maybe by the time this comes out, it's already happened. But yeah, I think the thing with Kraft that's so encouraging is like when he is the focal point of the offense, they can use him in like different depths of the field. Like you think about his ability with the ball in his hands on like a screenplay. He might be the best in the league at this. I mean, Bowers obviously is great too, but like he's just so unstoppable with the ball in his hands. And then you think about his ability to run some of those routes in the intermediate area of the field. He can do all that stuff. And so there are very few tight ends in the league that you can actually like build your offensive game plan around. I think LaFleur knows he can do that with Tucker Kraft. And so maybe for the second year in a row, while we're all debating Jaden Reed and Christian Watson and all these, question marks at wide receiver, it's like, oh yeah, it was Tucker Kraft the whole time. And he's one of those guys that just kind of vaults up a tier. I wouldn't be surprised by that if he has another good season. Now, the only thing is he is coming off the ACL, so perhaps a little bit slower start. But regardless, I mean, he is a rock solid guy to have on your dynasty roster.
Kraft and LaPorta could easily end up with 10 plus touchdowns. As you start moving down the tiers, you're like, which are the guys that could have the outlier touchdown seasons? These guys. I did have one quick question about Harold Fannin, because the offense that the Browns had last year was not an NFL offense, and therefore he earned targets at a level that like it's just not normal. Like in a normal flowing offense doesn't work that well. So I just asked, like with Todd Monken there and the way that the offense should function, like would it shock you if he like dropped in target share now that there could be some more targets?
No, if Fannin, I mean, the scariest thing about Fannin to me is that you just took a first round and a second round wide receiver. The target competition. If you look around at, this has kind of been my argument a little bit against Loveland, which I don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not arguing against Loveland. But if you look at pretty much every grade A, super great tight end for fantasy football, they are at worst the 2 on their team. Always. They're at worst the 2, usually the 1. But more than that, it's capped at 2. It was Kelsey and Tyreek, and then there wasn't really a third option to go to. When Gronk was Gronk, when whoever it is, Bowers
Andrews
is alone, McBride is alone. When it was Andrews, there wasn't a bunch of other wide receivers. It's always that way. You are one of only 2 targets, if not one of only 1 target, to really be a sensational superstar in fantasy football. Fannin could still be that because Concepcion and Denzel Boston are unproven. But last year it was, you're talking about Fannin and Jerry Jeudy, who is proven to not be great. And so,
but
now
make money doing it.
Good. Go get that shmoney. Man, I really did think Jerry Jeudy in the college tape of Jerry Jeudy where he was drafted, I thought he was going to be a lot better than he is. And I think most people in the NFL did too. But yeah, Harold Fannin benefited from a lack of target competition, and now he could still say, I am the target leader. He could lead this team in targets, but it will absolutely be more difficult because there is legitimate competition now.
For sure. I think there's one counterpoint, or I guess 2 counterpoints on that, but I agree with your point, Jason. Just thinking about range of outcomes. We all approached Fannin last year, whether it was as a rookie prospect in Dynasty or as a redraft sleeper. A lot of people, including us, were like, this is probably going to take a little time. Smaller school, making the leap, all those things. David Njoku is there. And in the first game of the season, they had him, and different coaching staff, but they had him in wildcat formations, and they had him as the target earner and doing all sorts of stuff out of the backfield. Just get this guy the ball. That is the game plan. And it was happening in week 1 of his first NFL season. And now you have a play caller and a coach in Todd Monken who, we need to be careful doing this because not these players are not the same. We get in trouble doing this at times. But if you just look at his tight end usage in recent seasons, obviously with Baltimore, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, go back to when Todd Monken was at Georgia, he had Brock Bowers. He's not afraid to feature the tight end in his offenses. And so I do think while those concerns are valid because the wide receivers are better this year, I still think it's potentially likely that Harold Fannin is leading this team in targets.
He had a 31% first read target share in 12 personnel, but then just 14% when there were 3 wide receivers on the field. So it'll be interesting to see how he functions, how the offense functions with Monken. And the last thing I'll say is, I feel like my price for Fannin, if I drafted him last year, is different than where I'd take him in a startup. Because in a startup, it kind of feels like no man's land to figure out where he goes. But if you drafted him last year, you're like, sweet, this was free house money. He was a 3rd round pick. So those are the things that I always go back and forth with. Man, in a startup, he's our tight end 5, but I don't know if I want to draft him as the tight end 5.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and then we'll finally talk about Kyle Pitts. All right, in tier 5, I have a bunch of young bucks in here with Kyle Pitts. So he's the old guy of this tier. Kyle Pitts, Oronde Gadsden, Eli Stowers, and Kenyon Sadiq. So it's funny to look at Pitts as the elder statesman. I think that these guys will not be in this tier next year. They're going to be moving, some up, some down, but this is a volatile group. I'll just say, I would not feel comfortable with any of these guys this year being my one. I guess Pitts, you just kind of live with the ebbs and flows, but a year from now, I feel like there's going to be a lot of movement in this group.
For sure. Big time movement because there's so many question marks on Gadsden's role with the new scheme and how many tight ends they have. And Eli Stowers, is kind of a project at the next level. Most people are thinking he might, for lack of a better term, kind of redshirt this year for the most part or play limited snaps and be a part-time player. And then Kenyon Sadiq, who knows? Rookie tight ends are kind of a mixed bag. I know historically it's been great for first round or tight ends recently, but Sadiq seems like more of one of those guys who could get off to a slower start in the NFL. So, and then there's just the Jets' uncertainty at quarterback and play caller and head coach. And so there's just so many moving parts with those 3. I think including Pitts in this tier is a little unfair to him, if I'm being honest. I don't know. I wouldn't put him with LaPorta and those guys. Don't get me wrong, but I think he might have his own
wounds. I'm totally fine.
His own mini tier ahead of this.
Own single tier, like
it's just the Kyle Pitts tier.
It's not even in a row. It doesn't even go through 1, 2, 3. It's just in its own multiverse.
It is also worth saying there is a world that exists where Kyle Pitts becomes a dominant force in fantasy. I genuinely, I'm not going to rule that out of existence.
I think about it most days. I do.
Yeah, as a Falcon fan, but I'm not a Falcon fan. Obviously, Kyle Pitts was drafted to be great. That's one that it was thrown around as a generational prospect that turned out to not be great. Now, obviously, 1,000 yards as a rookie, then dealt with injuries, really hasn't looked the same since those injuries. And then last year, he finished as like the tight end 2, tight end 3, something like that.
Tight end 2.
And a lot of that was injuries to those who were outscoring him on a per game basis. Tons of players, whether it was the injuries to the quarterback in Tyler Warren's case, or the player Kittle and Tucker Kraft. And then there's the excuse, which is also a fact, that Kyle Pitts did the vast majority of his work in games that Drake London was not in. But there is also the reality that he did amazing work in the games that Drake London missed. He stepped up and was a dominant force on an NFL field, which was what they drafted him to be. There is very little other target competition here. We talk about, for a tight end to succeed, you got to be at worst the second target. I don't think Zachariah Branch is coming in here as a 5-pound rookie and dominating targets. Maybe he does, but more than likely, obviously Bijan's going to also dominate targets, but more than likely you have Kyle Pitts as the number 2 target down the field. And so there's a world where what he did last year, they paid him money. He just ends up being more involved and better. And whether it's physically better, removed from the injuries of the past, whether it's mentally better, removed from the noise of being a bust, he might just come out this year with a new team, a new regime. Stefanski's used the tight end in the past, and establish himself as a weekly consistent player who is still young. He's not like, because of last year, because there were really five rookie tight ends that made an impact. Gadsden, Fannin, Loveland, Warren. Okay, so 4. Those guys are mostly in 22, and so 25 sounds old, but 25 is not old. Kyle Pitts is still got that 3-year window of his prime. So before we move on, I do want to say, if you are a believer in Pitts, I don't think it's insane. And I do believe a world exists where he ends up becoming a dynasty. Like at the end of this year, you go, oh, he's 2 tiers higher.
I don't think that's crazy. I think it's so hard when I think about what Stefanski's been good at, which is running the ball, 12 personnel. You'd think that Pitts would benefit from being in 12 personnel. And yet, there's so many things of how they've functioned as an offense, and I know I'm super biased, where it's like he's just erased from the play. He's erased from the conversation, despite there being fewer wide receivers on the field. He's just I don't know how he fits into the NFL at all.
Yeah, and the hope here is that was coaching and scheme and play design, and that the new staff coming in is going to ground up get him involved. And we don't get to find out until the season plays out.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add because it's well documented at this point with Kyle Pitts that it's been a little bit of a frustrating roller coaster. I do think there is something though to be said about just the uncertainty in those first couple seasons where Kyle mentioned it, the role, what are you in the NFL? Are you a big slot? Are you kind of a move tight end? Can you play in line or not really? And sometimes it just takes players more than a year or two to figure that out. And then you add on the injuries and the scheme that was ever changing with the Falcons because they keep changing play caller and everything. And it takes some time for these guys. And so all in all is to say is I think Kyle Pitts has a very wide range of outcomes where I agree with Jason. I don't think I would have said this 2 years ago. I could see him being a second contract guy that you're dude, Kyle Pitts is unbelievable in this new scheme. This team is paying him to be a feature part of their offense, because that could change in a year, right? He's only on the franchise tag, so who knows where he's playing next year. I think he'll make a lot of money in free agency, assuming he has a good to solid year this year. And so I do think there is ceiling with Kyle Pitts, which is crazy to say because we've been so frustrated so long. But like Jason said, you don't just step on a field and yes, Drake London was out and do what he did. So like, I think Kyle Pitts is an interesting trade for target because he's not going to cost you much. Like, people are so annoyed of Kyle Pitts and the frustration and all these things. Like, I don't know what it would take to get him, but I think that he's at least worth poking around on, especially if you have like a kind of stable but like boring veteran that you can plug in. You're not going to win your league with, I don't know, who's your tight end one? Like Mark Andrews Dalton
Jake
Schultz
Ferguson.
Yeah, like those guys are fine, but you're not going to win your league. Like, there is a world that exists. Perhaps it's a very small possibility, but it exists where Kyle Pitts can be that second contract guy that we've seen so many times in the NFL. That I'm with Jason. I think he's really interesting.
Kyle, did I talk up your local guy enough to get Tucker Kraft? Huh?
You did. You gave a great argument. He is in the second contract. He signed the extension in June after the...
I thought he was on the franchise tag.
He was franchised, and then he signed a 3-year extension in late June.
Well, I'm an idiot.
Well, but I mean, the point is he's
still
in the second contract. He could still be a second contract guy.
No,
and
I know, but I thought he was a free agent next year.
Yeah, funny enough, I mean, we bring up Greg Olsen a lot of times, like as a perfect example. There's plenty of others, Evan Ingram and others, but Greg Olsen was like the best example of like team wasn't using him right. It switches over to Carolina, and then it's like, oh, okay, you are a dominant force. You don't necessarily have to switch teams if the coaching staff and the players around you switch. So he's like switched by remaining in Atlanta.
All right, I got to ask you, we didn't mention really these guys in this tier. Have you heard anything about Oronde Gadsden over the last 2 months in the summer?
No, I haven't heard anything about Oronde Gadsden. Gadsden is living on film, a short stretch of being dominant, a pedigree of coming from NFL stock, youthful upside, a production profile in college. It was great. Everything pointed towards pure and utter young dominance on a great offense. Oronde Gadsden II, who is last year's rookie for the Chargers. However, now it seems like they brought in Njoku, which temporary blip in the map.
And Kohler, who was a 3-year deal.
Kohler, 3-year deal, paid him some money. They want to run with tight ends, I think, more as well. And so, I don't know. I was hot and bothered for, a month of his rookie season and believed the breakout.
Little fling.
It's funny that David Njoku really did, like, it was the ALS ice bucket challenge level of just like, and it's at this point in time, should we really be that afraid of David Njoku at this stage of his career in a dynasty league? Like, that shouldn't change our opinion of what we thought of him last year.
I don't care about Njoku. I care about the offense, how it functions, and I hate saying it, but like Charlie Kohler's going to be on the field so much, like Will Disley was, to the point of like, how is this team? And then they go into 3 wide receiver sets. It's like he's competing for targets. Like, I have him on a team. I tried to trade him this offseason. And at the end of the day, he kind of is left in this Blawville. We have him at tight end 9. Like, a year from now, he could be tight end 15, sadly.
Yeah, but he could also jump up. I mean, what he did show was exceptional ball skills, athleticism as a receiving tight end. He was great. And keep in mind, while they did bring in Njoku because they want to, and Kohler, they want to run more 2 tight end sets. They, as of this moment, did lose Keenan Allen, who had 122 targets. And so we've talked a lot about how that affects Ladd McConkey, but targets in the middle of the field, they don't just go to one player. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself back into the feelings I had watching him break out last year.
Betz, did he just do like a full like emotional circle of like, here's where I was.
I saw the whole thing happen right in front of my eyes.
I had a fling and then it came down, but you know what? That was a good little fling we had. We went on a couple of dates. It was nice.
Yeah, I didn't do a 180 or a 360. That was a 540, my friends.
Nice.
I went all the way around and half again.
They said it couldn't be done. Also, Eli Stowers, I've only heard negative things, which is he's not ready. That's what I keep hearing.
I mean,
to play NFL tight end.
Yeah, I'll say this,
which makes sense.
I was just researching whatever I could find on Eli Stowers earlier today, and the vibe is basically like early. There was kind of the report that he was invisible. That was what the word was being used. That was during the mini camps. Then he got injured. This is nothing yet. People all of a sudden from like the first day of pre-practice is like, oh, he wasn't great. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on the bad news from, like, I feel like you're looking at it feels like I'm looking at smoke in the distance that's too far away to call that a forest fire. That might be like someone's backyard barbecue, and we're like, there's something, man. There's something. Just like, give it a breath. Obviously, his roster spot is completely secure. They spent on him. He's the future. This year's outlook is not secure at all.
Yeah, for sure. This is a guy I wouldn't change my opinion on for Dynasty. I don't want to say no matter what happens this year, but like, your expectation for him on your roster is he's a developmental tight end that will take some time in the NFL, and you knew that when you drafted him because he just started playing tight end recently at Vanderbilt. And so it's going to take time for him because he's been kind of a hybrid, slot wide receiver type of guy. It takes time with these guys. And so he's in that bucket of like, at the end of the year, you look up and he only had, 20 catches and 200 yards. Like, nobody should be surprised by that. I will say, like, with Dallas Goedert, it's kind of funny. They've been kind of like trying to move on for a couple of years from him, and he keeps taking a pay cut, like 1-year deals to keep coming back, And so I do think, like Jason said, Stowers is the future, Goedert for this year. So don't be surprised if it's a slow start to his NFL career.
It's kind of like Terrence Ferguson last year. You have a couple of deep shot plays. Sure. He shows up every once in a while, but he's in a tight end rotation. And so you don't abandon the long-term outlook, but you can just say for this year, it's probably going to be a little bit lower down. That's going to do it for this episode. If you want all of our Dynasty rankings, you can find them in the Dynasty Pass. You can find them in the app. And we will be back again next week as we get into August, talking about preseason, training camps. It's here. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.